In this video, traders, we're going to look at how we determined counter trend trade targets. Stick around for this one. Hey guys, warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't checked out our channel sponsor, have a look. Link in the description below. But in this video, we're going to look at counter trend trade targets. So counter trend is really a skill set in its own. You know, what we're looking for with a counter trend trade is like, hey, this is stretched quite a long way. We're looking to kind of trade against the trend, but we don't think we're going to get a full reversal. So let's have a look at the example here. So imagine we've got a kind of downtrend here, and this could be a swing trading chart or an intraday chart, or it could be a daily time frame chart. But we kind of spot some sort of bottom and we're long against the direction of the trend. So the broader trend is down and our counter trend trade is to the long side. However, we don't necessarily think we're going to get a full scale reversal, so we're not kind of playing for that. We're playing for literally a counter trend move and expecting at some point to perhaps revisit later in the day, later in the month, later in the quarter if we're swing trading. So how do we determine those targets, and how do we, because let's not forget, it's a different thing we're thinking about if we're thinking of a full kind of scale reversal. So assume we've done all our research on that and our decision making process on that and said, okay, counter trend trade, scalp only if you like. How do we determine where it's going to go, how far it could go? So some of the things that we can use I've got here for you. So the first thing is kind of an obvious one, pretty simple one, is a moving average. So you'd have a moving average, you know, running down. You know, obviously the higher the moving average, the further the target away. So if you're on a daily chart, 20s, well, depending on how you've got into it, actually, doesn't it, to be fair? Let's think about this. If you were looking at a 20-period moving average, it's probably going to be like this. So if you'd bought, let's say, a flush, maybe a 20-period is a good place to come out because you're only looking for a little counter trend move. If you'd waited and perhaps bought a double bottom, you're probably only quite close to the 20-period moving average. So you might want to extend it out to a 50-period or something like that and go wider on it. But again, framing it based on some kind of average price over a period of time, which is what a moving average is a good way of using it as a mean reversion type play. And again, depending on where you've got in, if you've got in on some kind of flush, looking for a counter trend pop, that's a lot different to a counter trend rally where you're expecting a prolonged move, in which case go with a little bit of a wider moving average. Intraday, we could use a VWAP as well. I probably should have put that at number 2. Obviously, volume weighted average price, intraday, very good place to look to take profits on a counter trend trade. Very often it might not quite get there because it depends on the situation, but often the VWAP's quite high up, and if it gets there, it's maybe a different type of trade structure, but something like that, you can maybe go half the distance between the VWAP and you're on the low, something like that. Again, it's just framing levels. Another really good one, guys, is price support. So if you can imagine perhaps that this level here was some kind of support, you might say, right, well, I'm in on the lows here, higher low, breakout, whatever it may be. I'm going to use this as a primary target. And nothing to say you can't scale out the trade as well. You may not think it's going to do a full scale reversal. There's nothing to say you don't want to scale out, you know, let's say 3/4 of that and leave one on with a trailing stop. That's fine. But, you know, price support, very often where you might find the price stall, it might flip back down again and rotate back down. So that's a good one. Another one is something like an X% retracement or a fib. So you put in your fibs or your retracements and you go, right, well, that's a 50% retracement of the move. Oh, that's a Fibonacci number, whatever you're using, depends on how you want to frame it. Or, you know, it's 25% off the low, something like that. Just a general kind of target. Now, you don't necessarily have to be so strict and so binary with it. But what you can do is then say, okay, well, how's price reacting? Let's say you're swing trading. Let's say the price has moved back up. Let's say you're on a counter trend trade, it's doing well. You might say, well, let me not meddle with it, but let me look when we get to kind of 50% retracement, 25% retracement, or some kind of fib number retracement, and let me see how it's got there. Let me see how the volume is. Let me see if we've had any pullbacks. You know, because maybe if it's ripped straight up to the 50%, you're like, well, that's not even pulled back yet. So maybe I don't want to be so quick to cut it. Let me just see how it pulls back, and then see what happens on the further pullback. Does it go higher? Does it then stagnate? And it's just kind of making that decision based on the level as opposed to just, oh, I'm definitely coming out the 50%. But it's a good way of framing it again anyway. And don't forget, all of these things, we're just trying to frame the trading with a bit more structure, because very often as humans, we're looking at this, we're like, well, how far is it going to go? What's it going to do this? We need a reference point. And a reference point, generally, naturally speaking, is going to be our entry or the low. and often we need something a little bit more of an anchor. So, having something like a support level, having a moving average, we can start to see how price is relative to that. And so we start to watch and see, well, actually, price is above a moving average, it's holding above it. And even though it might not be everything at the level that everyone's looking at so much, but it's a level that we can use as a reference point. And the final thing is breakouts. This is one of my favorite ones. It's actually when we get a little bit of a breakout to the upside to scale into. So what does that mean? So let's say we've pushed up, let's say we pushed down again, and let's say we're trying again here and we're breaking out of that high. That is very often a nice place to take your counter trend trade off. Why? Because often it's sucking new buyers in. They think it's a fresh breakout, and yes, of course it could go higher, but very often that is a retracement point where we often see a move back to lows from that. I don't know why it happens. I think it's just literally because of the nature of the supply demand. We find a fresh high, we try again, there's no more buyers in there, and short starts to get aggressive with it. Longs like you or I who are in it start to come out of it, and I think it exaggerates that move lower. So that's one of my favorite ones, is looking for a breakout to the upside on a counter trend. Or if you've been in kind of a stagnated range and you're counter trend trading and it starts to break out of that range, that's not a bad place to look for the exit either. So any kind of counter trend breakout, good place to start to scale out of the trade, or at least consider taking a good chunk of it off. So we've got a moving average, guys, got the price support, VWAP for trading intraday, a percentage retrace or a fib, and then of course a breakout. Good ways of trading counter trend trade and having those targets for counter trend trades, because it can be quite tricky. Some tongue twisters in there. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section below. How do you frame your target? Have you got any ideas that you'd like to add on how you look for your targets if you're trying to trade counter trend trade, those counter trend trade rallies we often have on the short move, etc. Let me know your thoughts. All right, guys, take care, keep your manage whatever you do, and I shall see you in the next video. Goodbye.